meeting.
Okay. Record has been pushed.
Thank you. I assume we will probably continue to see a few people join in the next few minutes. And looks like we've got 16 people, 17 people at this point. For those of you waiting, we're trying to ensure that we've got a legitimate quorum. I believe the number is 8 that we have to have voting members, if I remember correctly from previous meetings.
I have a roster here of the council members. Can we just go down? And
that'd be fine, Perry. Thank you.
So first name is me. I'm here, Perry Stokes. Delia Fields online.
Don't see the name up.
Okay. Ann Zwelke.
No.
Nope. Kathleen, I see her name there. Yes. Dia, I heard her voice. Deneen.
No.
I don't see Deneen's name. Kathy Street. No. Lily, I did see her. That's, yeah. Lily is here. Ryan McGinnis. Actually, Kip, did you take over for Ryan?
I didn't take over, but I am voting his proxy today.
Okay. So we'll count him as a yes. Rachel, I saw her name, so that's a yes. Mark is here. Marcia, I saw her name. And, oh, do we have Delia twice? As both circulating schools and special libraries? Regardless, we have 8 people, and that is a quorum.
Okay, we're good to go then. Thank you, everyone, for calling in and participating today. A few things to accomplish. So, everybody's had a chance to look at the agenda. Is there anything that anybody would like to have added to the agenda at this time?
Mark, do you have a copy of the agenda that you could show on your screen?
I don't know that I can. I haven't gotten that sophisticated with GoToMeeting yet. So if you have the copy that I sent you and you could share it, that would be great. I don't know if you'd.
I'll see if I can locate it quickly.
All right. Okay. So we will entertain additions to the agenda as we get a chance to look at that. Let's look at the minutes from the previous meeting. Has anybody had a chance to look at those closely and can make a motion at this point?
Mark, I have not sent them out. I am about a half hour away from completing them. I've gotten them most of the way done. So I propose that I send them out following the meeting for an email vote.
I would agree with that. Do we need to do anything more than, or just, can we get a motion for that? Not hearing a motion.
I'm not sure that we need a motion. We'll just table approval of that.
Okay, we will. All right, well, go ahead and table the minutes approval until they can be sent out to everyone, and we will do that electronically. One of the things I want to make sure of is that if anyone is not hearing that they communicate in some fashion, either by texting or sending one of us that is talking a message, and we'll try to keep an eye for that. I was recently in a meeting where I didn't feel like I was being heard in an online setting, and it can become very frustrating, and I'd prefer that that not be the case here. The agenda, the next thing I show on our agenda at this point is the membership fee restructure proposal committee report. Perry, or do you have things that you have ready to share with that on that?
I do. I have a special presentation.
All right, go ahead and get that ready, Perry. And I want to thank those that were involved in it. I know Marcia participated, and so did. I'm a little surprised she's not here with us this morning. And I'm going to slaughter her name. I'm sure of it. But I know she participated as well from. Where's?
Are you talking about Enterprise?
Yeah, Enterprise participated very well. I appreciated her being there at those meetings electronically. So,
Perry, I'm about to make you presenter.
Okay. All right. So exciting. I made a PowerPoint presentation, everybody. Can you see this splash page proposal 2020 member fee formula?
Yes.
I can see it.
Very
Okay.
impressive.
I know. I did this to really organize my thoughts. Otherwise, I don't know that I make sense. So Budget Committee, I want to echo what Mark said. Thanks to everybody who participated. Beth and Aaron McCusker from UC SLD, and Deneen from Enterprise, Marcia from Klamath, and Mark from Hermiston. So what I'm going to go over is some background of the why we need to do this, then the how, what our process entailed, and then we're going to do the what of what we've come up with, and the when of how we get to where we want to go. So why? This might be repetitive. Some of you might know this, some of you don't, but I think it's important to review. Our current structure has some disparities that really became clear when I think it was Harney and Grant both crossed a threshold. We've got a pricing structure based on kind of aggregate groupings of members based on their population. And Grant and Harney went below that, I think, or yeah, they went below. So they dropped basically from 10,000. I think they were going to drop a lot farther, but we created this new tier to accommodate their kind of new aggregate group. It was still a pretty significant shift. I mean, that's 5,000 for, you cross this 7,500 line, and then you're up to 10,000 again. Or you go below 4,000, and you're dropped down to 1,700. So our options really are continuing to create these new little aggregate groups or do something new. The other issue that we identified was a big disparity in the cost per capita. We're using population as our basis for service, and we have some libraries here, the little libraries that are paying $2, $5, $3 per capita, and some that are paying 50 cents per capita or less. So that needs to be rectified if we're going to continue this model. Here's the big libraries that are paying under $1, mostly around 50 cents. So our discussion topics were what metrics are available to determine who's putting most demand on the system and who's not. What kind of data can we get? We looked at why do we charge academic and school libraries more or less? And we looked at how does a complex formula work based on different criteria such as checkouts, number of records in system, number of active card holders, and simultaneous users. I don't think we actually got that metric. And then we had a question of what do other peer consortia use? There's got to be people out there like us, there are groups out there like us. What do they do? So we, last year around this time, we had a survey to SAGE members about their satisfaction and knowledge about SAGE pricing. We had 16 respondents, and I'll show you those responses here in a minute. We had a strategic planning meeting following that with 11 participants, and the consensus really was that we need to do something new, but it was kind of too late in the process to get something developed and implemented by the time the budget cycle rolled around for that year. So we postponed it until this year. So this year, we got the budget strategic planning committee together, 6 participants, a couple times in mid-December. Beth was able to survey other consortia. She got 10 responses. And we sent out a survey of weight preferences based on some of those ideas from the consortia models in January. Good response on that. Over 50% of SAGE members responded. And then we met a couple of times in January to discuss those and kind of refine our plan. A little bit more about the consortia models. Here are the different libraries that responded. Georgia Pines, Virginia, Noble, I don't know where they are, Indiana, Missouri. Okay. South Carolina, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Bibliomation. So I've included in this this slideshow the survey results from last year, but I'm going to kind of just really skip through this because we'll share the whole slide deck for you to look at later. Most people wanted to know more about how SAGE pricing is structured, and most people were actually satisfied. The participation was pretty low on that, though. We only had 16 members reply. Most of the dissatisfaction was because of this disparities and the unfairness of the system. There's some concern about losing small libraries. Here's an initial weighting of categories, what people would prefer to have most heavily weighted, considered for our formula building. Service population was the favorite. Checkouts and FTE staff, surprisingly, was tied at 6. Collection development budget and ILL borrowed actually also tied for 3rd. And then there was just a couple that supported base delivery fee for system maintenance. Of those, again, the most popular metric was service population. We asked if large libraries should pay higher rates because they use the system more heavily, and most agreed with that. Should larger libraries receive some compensation for contributing resources? They have larger collections that may be used by our resource sharing system. They may contribute more to the SAGE committees, cataloging, bringing in records, correcting records. Opinions were pretty divided on that. What challenge is most important? And we have most popular, 50% was growing SAGE system admin salaries to a competitive level. Next was adding a SAGE cataloger. And again, not losing libraries, not pricing out our small libraries was also a comment. So how willing were libraries, these 16, to have their fees raised? Some were maybe, some were good. Almost 19% were no way. My library can barely afford SAGE now. This is a little demographics about who responded. Some comments, which I'll let you read when we share the slide deck. And then the survey that we just did this just a week ago. Here's the breakdown of the median percentages for active cardholders. That could also be service population. 25%, collection size 20, so it's pretty evenly divided median-wise. But this, again, if you'll notice that this math does not add up to 100%. So, which is most weighted? It's the population, active cardholders or service population. If we take the average, that shows there's stronger support for that being a higher weight. Any comments, questions so far? Okay. So our objectives for creating a plan, we wanted it to be equitable, have a formula that was applicable to all members. We discussed some differences in needs for the academic libraries and school libraries, but really didn't seem great enough to factor in to a formula at this point. We wanted it prorated to usage and with some compensation for disproportionate contributions. Some libraries are loaning a lot more than they borrow. There was some support for that. We'll discuss how we worked that in a little bit later. We want this to be sustainable. We don't want to price out our smallest members. And we want the fee for the largest members to be competitive to market rate alternatives. We don't want to price ourselves out of our largest members because they bring a lot of support for everybody. We want this to be stable, so we utilized averages of population and card holders and circulation and courier, etc. So that those, when they change, they won't be a drastic fluctuation, cause a massive change in pricing. And we've crafted a strategy to implement this in 5 years. We could reduce that if people wanted to 3, but I think 5 years will be a challenge by itself. So some of the obstacles that made us throw out some of the criteria we discussed. The collection budget was discussed, but it's kind of redundant, a redundant metric to the number of items in the collection. It kind of disincentivizes investment in the collection. And one of the big deal breakers was, while we can pull collection budget from the state library reports, we don't have that same information conveniently from schools. So we want this to be an easy process. We don't want to have to make it really arduous. So we dropped that factor. And FTE staff, again, how do we get that from school members easily? That's not really doable. Okay, So some discussion about our metrics that we used. The active accounts, what are the pros and cons of that? Using that incentivizes account maintenance, purging inactive accounts, keeping your database up to date. It does have a drawback of disincentivizing creating cards, multiple cards for families. So it would, if you're getting charged by an active card holder, you're going to be more likely to recommend that family gets one family card instead of cards for each of their kids. And that's not a good thing. Service population assumes a higher tax base with a larger budget capacity and higher usage potential. Item and collection fee does incentivize weeding, keeping your collection weeded and your count down, but it disincentivizes collection growing. So there's pros and cons to that. Circulation fee, we're using that because it assumes an increased system load for transactions. More checkouts mean more work and wear and tear on the system. The courier fee, I'm going to come back to this. It's kind of complex, and I think it'll make more sense if I show you this from the spreadsheet. But real briefly, it recovers the SAGE portion of the courier costs from members, prorating to their use. Now, if you don't know, the total courier cost is supported by a grant from the state library through the IMLS competitive, or actually annual grant process, and I think they give $58,000. SAGE spends 35, or commits to spending 35 of that. 35 in addition to that 58,000. The formula for that is a combination of a base rate using the proportion of the total ILL traffic that a member uses, plus either a surcharge or a discount, depending on whether they're a net loaner or a borrower. So this provides a counterbalance to libraries with large collections that are lending out a lot and are resource sharing assets for consortium. It also provides some incentive for reducing barriers to interlibrary loans, such as long or a lot of age-based hold protection use, or restricting items from being loaned out, and developing the local collections to serve their own patrons. How are we doing so far? Is everybody with me? Okay. We're going to jump to the spreadsheet. I sent some PDFs out, so you've had a chance to look at these. I also sent a link to a download of the spreadsheet in case you wanted to play around with it. So these percentages here are linked to other spreadsheets in the spreadsheet, other worksheets in the spreadsheet. So if I change this base fee here to 15%, you'll see it changes the base rate up here. It's linking to this option 8 spreadsheet over here with more data. So if you want to play around with it, you can change these and it'll automatically update. Don't change that base rate because that automatically changes according to this percentage. You can also change this decimal figure here for courier. So 25 cents, this basically means for every interlibrary loan lent out, you there's a quarter paid one way or the other. We can change that as well, and that changes the formula. So this master of option 8 is the active accounts, the number of, or the percentage of the items, base fee of 20%, and circulation. And that most closely matches what was reflected in the survey. Now, I've kind of copied and pasted data from this master into these other columns. These are not formulas, these are fixed. So if you change these, it won't do anything. This is just for your reference to see how changes in the percentage formulas play out in costing to members. So all these option 8s are based on active accounts with different percentage weights. We did have one comment from the survey that they would like to see 50% of accounts and a 50% base fee. So I included that in there just to see what that would look like. And the difference between option 8 and 5 here and 8.6 is that this has 0 surcharge or refund for courier, and this has 50 cents per item. Just see how that would affect it. Option 9s here are all the same structures. And again, this is the master column. If you want to play around with this, you can, but by adjusting these percentages. But this uses the service population instead of the active accounts. Just a little bit more about how the formula is created. We'll use this option 9 as an example. Let me go over to the option 9 worksheet. Okay. So, service population. This column here is the percentage of the service population as a percentage of the total of SAGE members. And here's the population fee using that. And we get that by taking the 0.4% in the case of Weston here. And we are multiplying that 0.4% here we go, by what is the 30% of the SAGE operations budget. And that SAGE operations budget is personnel costs and all of the materials and services cost, less what is subsidized by the IMLS Career Grant. So again, this is 30% of, let's go to the SAGE budget so you can see where we get that. %30 of a combination of personnel services cost and materials and services cost, less the career grant. That figure is here. So for this year, it was 213. assuming this is a draft budget which we haven't worked out yet, $221,000 operations budget. 30% of that is $56,000. 0.4% of that is how we get to Weston's population fee. So that is how we come up with these fees for active accounts. We skipped cardholders. 4 items. There's the total physical items in Sage. Here's the percentages of Weston's portion of that total. If we use the item fee as 20%, this is this 0.7 is times that $37,000, and so on for the others. Here's the base operation fee. If that is 20% of the operation budget, we need to raise 37. This one is a little different. This is, since it's the base fee, that is divided among all the members. That's the standard minimum amount that every member pays to support systems for security, for for personnel. Everybody pays a flat rate to support Sage. Circulation fee, again, here's the total circulation average for 3 years. If we use 30%, we again have that $56,000 figure. Now the courier fee here. Again, we have the percentage of Sage borrowed, total Sage borrowed averaged over just 2 years. We need to get 1 more year in there. And let me take this this 0.25 out of there so you can see what that would be real quick for Weston. So the total average for Weston loaned is $553. The total they borrowed was $314. They're a net lender of over 200 items, 239. Here's the ratio of those, but we don't really use that. It's just really for information. The percentage of Sage borrowed, they borrow, again, just 0.4% of total of Sage. So if we just do that without a kind of surcharge or a refund, then their courier fee would be $130. We put that back in. Since they're a net lender, they get some of that money back. And so their charge is reduced to $71. So the total fees here are linked to all of these different columns. If I've done it right, that's how it works. Let me go back to my slides here. So some of the findings from my perspective looking at these and the committee's perspective, the service population, the effect of using that actually reduces the cost to academic libraries because we're using the percentage of the member libraries as a proportion of the Sage total as a whole. If we use the service population, academic library costs go down because their proportion of the Sage service population is lower. using the active card holders creates the largest cost increase of any option for the DALs. So that was in option 8. This $23,000 would be what they would pay if we base the formula on active accounts. That's pretty high. If we use service population, it's a little bit lower, but that 23,000 is I think that's the highest figure I saw of anybody paying. There is negligible impact to small libraries depending on whether we use active cardholders or service population. The highest impact is to the largest libraries, LeGrand, Pendleton, and the DALs. On option 8 or 9.1, actually both of these, currently our base fee for our interlibrary loan members is $400. So these include these libraries like Elgin High School, Hermiston High School, Ione, Fish Trap, Stanfield, Tomastlicht. If we increase the base fee, so they're going to be jumping from 400 to, if it's 20%, to nearly $700. Let me just note also that these member libraries I've highlighted in red are what might be considered the most at-risk small libraries to possibly lose in case their fees go up. They were the ones that I could see had the smallest collection budgets from the data that we did have from state library reports. So if we have a high base fee, concern on that is that it may drive away some of our interlibrary loan and small members. On option 8 or 9.2, the larger libraries pick up a larger percentage of the burden. This also has least stress on the most at-risk libraries with the smallest collection budgets. So that would be a 15% base fee, highest weight on the number of accounts, active accounts or service population in the case of the 9 options, 25% each on number of items and circulation. A higher courier surcharge discount really has a big effect on the DALs and other libraries that have a disparity in how much they loan or borrow. You know, if they're borrowing a lot more, they're going to have extra courier fee. If they're lending out more, they're going to have a reduction in their fees. So that, again, this 25 cents per item is adjustable. We could have a higher rate of 50 cents or $1. Let me just show you how that plays out here. If we raise that to $8 per item, again, remember that the DALs had 23,000. If we have that to $1, that's reduced to just under 20,000. But we could have that at whatever rate that the user council would like. 50 cents, it's a little bit less, to 22,000. Okay, so here's a list of the smallest libraries that are most consistently adversely impacted by all of the scenarios. They don't have big budgets, and if we look at which options affect these the least, it is options 8 or 9, 2 that have the small base fee and these weight percentages. Any questions so far? Okay. So, are we going to jump up to these new formulas this next year? No, we're not. It's going to be, whichever one we choose, it's going to be rolled out over, here's a 5-year plan. So let's look at a library with a big change. Umatilla. They are currently paying, if we keep our current structure, they would be paying next year about $10,600. Under sample option 9.2, their rate would be reduced to $4,500. That's a reduction of $6,000. First year, we are dividing this $6,000 reduction over 5 years and applying that 1/5 to the 10,000. And that's how we get to their first year price. This next year, we're applying that same 1/5 plus a 1% growth, assuming that our operations budgets are going to grow somewhat over the next 5 years. We're going to need to increase the amount we collect. And this is just a guess of 1%. So that formula becomes a little bit more complex in year 2, 3, 4, 5, but that scales them down to around where the formula target is. Similarly with libraries that have big increases, the DALs currently paying $13,000 under the new formula would be $21,000. It would scale up to 14, then 16, 18, 20, and 21. So it's important to note that these projected fees are estimates only. They are our actual SAGE budget for the next year hasn't been developed, so we are just kind of guessing on what the operations budget is. We are guessing what the future ones are going to be. There's going to be changes in circulation and ILL, and all that's going to impact how these actual fees over the coming years are going to be assessed. So these are just estimates. Don't be spending any money that you think you might have. So my recommendation, since I use that 9.2, really is for that because it results in least change variation from the members from what they're used to, and it's fair. I think for the ones that are increased or decreased, there's a good logic for that. The ones that are increased, I think they have an ability to pay. I think it's market rate probably from what they could get if they went with a different product or out on their own. One note about the courier surcharge. Interestingly, if we raise that, it does affect some libraries that have really high borrowers and net borrowers. But it also rewards the lenders. So we might start out with 25 cents, but I think we should look at raising that up over the years. So my recommendations, the committee's recommendations for next steps, is have everybody take time, the whole membership take time to digest and explore these options, discuss it, decide, have this user council decide on a preferred formula in March at our next stage meeting. If not, have a special meeting called in February. And I recommend that this new structure, whatever we choose, be approved by the full membership with an electronic vote. This is a big change, and I think it should be SAGE-wide approval. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Perry. Appreciate the work that you put into this and the other members of the committee as well. Discussion.
Perry, this is Beth. What was your thoughts about when the full member electronic vote would take place?
Well, that could be done a couple different ways. The user council could decide on a single formula and have that yes or no vote, or they could decide on a couple of options and have members vote to select their preferred options. But so that I would think the user council would decide in March, and the survey of electronic vote should take place immediately after.
Okay, that was my concern. I thought they should be pretty close together, just because of taking this information forward to their own local budgets.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments at this time?
This is Amy Hutchinson in Lake County, and I just had, just kind of thinking about the future of SAGE, and it seems like we have kind of maybe more needs that we would like to have addressed than we have revenue in general. And I see that some libraries, including my own, could reap some substantial savings over the course of this implementation. And I'm just wondering, that to me, that seems like there's money on the table that people have been paying. So is there a way that SAGE could offer to give a benefit and keep that cash? So things I thought of, and I'm not trying to tell anyone what to do, I'm just tossing out ideas here, but I thought of people could contribute to a SAGE development fund, and then maybe they would get a vote on which development projects were completed for the year they contributed. Or if we delineated, this is what you get out of the box, but you can also get these 5 customizations for a low fee. Or I have a lot of records cleanup issues for my items records. I'd be happy to pay to have some of that work done. I'm just thinking that if we're creative, is there a way we can say, here is money that you can save, but also here is money you can contribute in a way that benefits you?
So that's really a notion of a charge for services requested. Beth, did that come up in any of the samples of the other library consortiums, how they worked? Did they show that as part of the fee structure, or is that possibly something that maybe wasn't discussed but may have been there?
I did not see that. So this wouldn't be a charge. This would be a volunteer
Yes.
concession of funds for future benefit to that particular library. I think it's a great idea. And since it is optional, could be utilized by those libraries that wanted it. So it would be a special budget category or income line that libraries could contribute to.
It would create the issue of how do you determine a cost of a service or of an additional feature of that nature. And it may be the kind of thing that does that. How does that affect the regular budget, or is that just an additional revenue source? I mean,
I would consider it an additional revenue source.
right.
That would be my intention too, is that, is there a way to capture more revenue in a way that makes Sage better and benefits libraries in a way that individual libraries could make a case that they want to contribute because of the benefit it will bring them, like to their budgetary authorities, but could increase the revenue for Sage overall. And you don't have to work out the details now. I'm just tossing it out there for you guys who know what you're doing and all the details to consider as we move forward on this whole process.
I think the idea is a good idea and one worth continuing to keep aware of. I guess, Beth, what that would mean is we'd have to identify what kind of things that would be at some point, and then to, make some kind of a determination on what the cost of such an additional service might be. And I think that's probably the new thing is how do you do that, and how do we ensure that we're getting enough funds that the additional resources going into it are well covered. Now, the other element of that is, does that mean that somebody's working overtime or what? Or is that just because if everyone's, I guess what it does kind of push against at some point is if everyone's paying into the system for the common usage, at some point then we'd be basically created, here are the additional pluses that you can buy into or that will become yours after a time frame, or that they become common after 1 or 2 years or something like that. Does that make sense?
And I guess I see what you're saying, but I guess the way I was thinking of it was more, I don't personally, and other people may feel differently, I don't personally care if I pay for a development that I want and everybody else uses it. I think that the way that I was looking at it was sort of like you're buying leverage to increase the timeline during which the thing that you want is available. But I wasn't necessarily thinking about that thing being embargoed from other people using. It's just more like a carrot to make the thing that's important to your library get done more quickly than would otherwise be available under our current resource structure.
Okay.
And I think the other question that I have is kind of, I guess, more a conceptual question of like, with the budget committee and with, I hear through the grapevine that Beth is approaching a semi-retirement phase of her career, if there's conversations happening about like, what does your Sage membership fee buy you, like sort of out of the box? And is there a point at which you have to pay extra to get special attention? Just because like with all my other vendors, like I get something for one fee level, and then if I want something more, I have to pay more to get it. And that makes us prioritize whether or not that thing that is shiny and sparkly and sounds good is actually worth the cost. Because I just don't remember ever in my entire time with Sage, which is like 12 years now, asking Beth, can we do this thing? And being told, no, you can't do that thing. It's really labor intensive and you're the only one that wants it. You know what I mean? Which is, it's great that we're able to offer a lot of flexibility for our libraries. And that's one of the things I love about Sage. But I just wonder if it makes sense to kind of say, like, this is what you get. And then if you want more, you have to pay more so that we have enough resources to provide everyone with the basic service efficiently, but then the ones that want more have an ability to buy more if they want it. But it just makes you have a discussion with yourself, like, is it actually worth it to me, you know, for $500 to customize those notices? Yes, it is, or no, it's not. That's all. I guess that's where I'm kind of getting at, is if we're having those conversations about what is the service you get for your membership, what is the service you don't get.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or issues surrounding the proposed fee structure and the future of fee structure? Okay. All right, Beth, what do we, now, isn't it our next meeting we have to have the budget approved?
Traditionally, yes. We have strived to get the budget approved in March so that libraries have sufficient time to then plan and record that amount in the budgets that they have to report to their boards.
Right.
So I guess the question comes up, do we need to have an interim meeting so that we feel like we're ready for a March vote?
We haven't looked at the budget per se. We've looked at the fee structure.
Correct, yeah.
And so do we need to form a committee for the budget itself?
No, I think the same committee could come up with a draft, and it looks like Perry has started that process. I just feel like I don't know whether we want to take time to look at those amounts right now, Perry, or do we want to send something out via email? What's your thought?
Yeah, I can go over the sketch that I've done currently. Sure, no problem. Let me screen share again. Here we are. This is in that worksheet, that spreadsheet that I shared out. This orange column is our approved budget for the current year. This kind of yellowish tan color is a draft for next year. Here is the actual figures of what Sage has resources and expended as of the 13th of this month. So I have 3% up here for assumption of growth on some of the categories. Our total cash on hand is around 205,000. Membership dues, this is tied to the operations budget, 221,000, assuming we collect that from members. Assuming that our LSTA courier grant stays the same, $58,000. And paybacks from members' use of OCLC, that might be higher since they just raised their rates. We might need to adjust that up. So total resources, $485,000. That's about a 3% growth over the approved budget for this year. So 3% is really applied to the salaries, just as an estimate. For systems administrator, that's Beth's salary, and the accounting done by Baker's financial officer. Salaries at $68,900. PERS, I think, is projected to go up significantly again. So I've got 19,000 there. And then 3% increase on the other benefits categories. Total personnel services of 102, 139.
Perry,
Mm-hmm.
with the retirement and health benefits not being covered for retirees, that amount would go away unless Sage wants to pay me some kind of stipend for health insurance.
Right. Yeah, we could redirect that up into salary. And actually, that health insurance went up significantly last year, so 3% is probably too low. It was like close to 10% for us last year.
Perry, if Sage pays me a stipend, it wouldn't be that total amount. I would only ask for something like $400 a month.
Okay.
So I'm saying that could be a category we could adjust.
Mm-hmm. Okay, materials and services. I've really gotten little change in these. What is this? Oh, this is the fiscal agency fee. It was somewhat adjusted. That's still in trying to figure that out. Others are basically the same or tied to use, past history, travel, over $3,000 year prior, and we're at $2,100 this year already. So I've kicked that up to $3,500. These are unchanged. Total operating budget of $281,000. And we take our career grant and other cost recoveries out of that operating budget, $221,600. So we do have a healthy cash reserve to operate Sage from July till the time we collect on our member dues. And I think we've got a healthy unrestricted balance as well. In case we have servers completely die, we need to buy a bunch more. So that's the rough draft.
So from the rough draft, next, are there adjustments that are going to continue to need to be made, Perry? Some minor ones based on what Beth's informed us of.
Right.
Okay. Do we have anyone that would be interested in joining the committee on the budget? If there is anyone, we would welcome you. If not, we'll continue with the 6 that we have. I think that pretty well wraps up the fee structure and the budget preparation for the coming meeting in 2 months. I believe that leaves us to a cataloging and a circulation report. Who is it that will be sharing their report from cataloging? Beth, do we have a person on that? I was under the impression that cataloging group had met since our last meeting.
Yes, they did. I'm trying to get the agenda up. Okay. So the cataloging committee met December 2nd, and what they reviewed was they reviewed series and deceased author and how to handle that situation, along with some examples. There were reminders on the matching standards and how to apply those. We also discussed free-floating subdivisions. There was a discussion on any general cataloging concerns and web client issues. And John also pointed out the upgrade page for catalogers to utilize to see what kind of cataloging changes were upcoming.
Any input or comments from the group on the cataloging report then? Are we ready for the circulation report?
Okay, I'm looking to see who else. Kathy's not in attendance. She's the chair of the circulation committee. We have met. What we're currently reviewing is the loan rule policies and coming up with a new draft for that document. Perry was in attendance as well. Do you have any other recollections, Perry?
No, just that we're working through. We found, new halfway done revision of that CIRC policy from 2013, I think, before we lost some of our leadership in that committee. And so we're going through and trying to see if those changes that were in that revision are still valid, and making adjustments as we go through. We didn't get very far.
Yeah, good work in progress though.
Yeah.
Great, appreciate the work in both of those committees, and thank you. What I have left on the agenda is the system update on the migration and the Evergreen app. Beth, and what do you have for us on those?
Okay, the system migration went fairly well. We are still dealing with questions and issues that folks have discovered since the upgrade. One of the major impacts after the upgrade was logging into the web client was difficult, so we had a stressful Wednesday evening. But finally got that figured out, and a lot of it was due to the fact that there were so many changes to the web client made between our version 3.1 and 3.4 that the browser needed a hard refresh rather than the typical refresh. So I feel like we've made some good progress. We're going to be continuing to work on issues subsequent to the upgrade, and we're also going to be doing some additional webinars to explain some of the new features, as well as blog posts. Do you have anything else to add to that, John?
Well, let's see. Personal settings are stored on the server now, so that should bypass the issues people have had before with losing copies of their templates, column preferences, and things like that. I've done an initial run through of shared reports to see which ones still work and which ones don't. The vast majority are fine. I've created a spreadsheet listing which ones aren't, and I'll go back and work on those that are either throwing an error or giving a blank report to see if I somehow made a mistake on the report. But I would say it's about 1% are failing. So like I said, the majority are working just fine. I've tested out the app post upgrade and everything seems to be working. I've also tested out the web client on my iPad, which also seems to be working just fine. Let's see. We did run into an outage on the 11th because of how EOU was handling the VMs, and they made a change without telling us because they didn't think it was going to impact anybody. But they were really responsive, and we were able to get it back up without losing any data. I think that's about everything.
I want to add that I'm continuing to look at the OPAC and changes that were made to various templates within the system. So there's some changes that I need to make to the web OPAC. So I'll be working on those in the next couple days so that we can implement the new code. Because right now it's not reflecting things like being able to select in a browse list things that you want to add to a list or a basket to do different functions with. So anyway, just a heads up that I will be working on those changes so that we'll be fully functional in 3.4 as far as the web pages are concerned. And I can give an update on the Evergreen app. Most of you probably noticed the emails that went out about being able to use the app in beta. And we've been able to use both the Apple and the Android apps. And so so those have been successful. And so
What time does she have the room for at 10 o'clock?
So we are going to be moving the app out of beta into live mode soon, but I want to wait until we get those web changes made in the catalog to make sure it's not going to break anything in the app. But very close to being able to take that out of beta and make it available to all of our patrons.
And the app name, people are looking for it on Google Play or whatever?
That's a good question. I think I called it SageCat.
I think you did. Yes.
When I was looking at app names, there's a lot of Sage apps. I was surprised at how many people used Sage in their title. So SageCat seemed to be fairly unique and recognizable to our patrons. That's something that we can put on the catalog main page to encourage folks to look for the app if that's something the council would like.
I think that would be great. I see that there's a show card element to the app that displays the patron's barcode. So this is a possibly a new way that patrons are going to be presenting their card. So libraries will need to be ready to accept that, I would guess, and know what that looks like.
Hermiston is ready for that. We found an app a year or two ago that would work. We haven't had very many people use it, and so I'm very excited actually to have the show card feature on SageCat, because we know we have people that will be really happy to have that available, rather than bring their phone and they've got what they need to do what they need to do at the library.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pleased with that. To me, that's a good feature.
Yeah. Plenty of people have lost their cards, and they don't want to pay a $2 fee or whatever to get a new one. So this is a way around that.
Yep.
Not all barcode scanners will scan from a phone.
Right. We had to upgrade.
Yeah.
We had to upgrade some of ours, but we were able to do that, and it was interesting because some of our old ones that are wired, they did it just fine, and the newer ones we had did not, so we had to replace the newer ones actually than the older ones. So give everything a try.
But you'd be able to type the barcode.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another thing, and this is just a thought I've had when I've used scanners at retail places for coupons and that kind of thing, sometimes you have to make the barcode image a bit bigger so that the scanner can catch it. That might be something to consider when you're testing as well.
And it should be on its brightest setting for the phone.
Correct.
So by turning it laterally, horizontally, you can make the barcode bigger? Is there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And or just using your fingers and spreading it sometimes can do it too.
It doesn't work on an iPhone, unfortunately. At least it doesn't on mine.
Doesn't on mine either. And it stays the same size, horizontal or vertical.
Guess that's an Android feature.
Lucky you. When do we see the app being fully available? And I'm sorry, I had to duck out real quickly to answer a staff question. Or did we already talk about that?
I mentioned it briefly, Mark, that the developer is ready to go as far as moving it out of beta into live production. I just wanted to make some web page changes over the next couple days to make sure that the app isn't going to break with the new code before I give him the go-ahead. So my guess is a week.
Great. Will you let us know when that's fully available? Because
sure.
For me, and I think for others, we'll want to put that on Facebook and newsletters and other things like that. So.
Yeah, no, I'll send an email out to the listserv, and I will also make an announcement on the main Sage catalog page, so that the patrons who are actively using the catalog know to go out and look for an app.
Great.
Do we want to give a little bit of time between when it's announced to staff and when it's announced to the public? And I'm thinking this because of this whole issue with being able to scan electronic cards and other kinds of things. You don't want to throw your patrons under the bus. Just wondering.
I think that might be a decision to each library of where they feel like they're at. I've asked my staff to all load that on their individual devices, so they're familiar with it. We know what our equipment will do. I feel like our library at least is ready for it. But I can't make that decision for other libraries, of course.
Well, what I'm wondering is when we actually post it on the web page or on the catalog that it's available, out, giving a space between when it's announced to Sage library staff people to.
Yeah, I could hold off putting it on the main page of the catalog for at least a week after we announce it to staff. and then individual libraries could publicize it as they feel their patron base is ready. But then at least we wouldn't be jumping the boat on the main publication of it. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I guess that's kind of what I was suggesting.
Okay. Yeah, I'll hold off. At least for a week. If that's sounds like a sufficient amount of time. A week past when we put it into production.
It might be helpful to send out some information on what models of barcode scanners do work, in case libraries want to upgrade.
It may not be models as much as what are the features. Is it a 2D or a 3D scanner? That's what we found anyway, was that to be able to read off of a phone, it's a particular type of scanner you need typically. But that's my experience, and that certainly isn't universal. I think that's where it's at, but I honestly don't know for sure. It's not my technology area.
Yeah, any information you could share because you upgraded your scanners, Mark, would be helpful to the other libraries. So
I'll ask Heidi to put something together for that. Then she's the one that did the research on that.
okay, great.
Okay. Have we concluded all of our reports then? Do we have anything else from the system or the system migration of the Evergreen app from anybody else? Everybody's happy and satisfied with everywhere we're at, right? Nobody's got a complaint in the world. You're a happy group of people out there.
I have a question. This is Dia. Are we going to be needing to have some sort of an interim meeting then between now and our next meeting for budget issues, or have we covered that?
My understanding was,
Go ahead.
We, as in
My-
the user council, I think we're going to have a Sage budget committee meeting.
Yes, the user council.
I don't think we need a user council meeting. I think that the budget committee will get together, go over the draft budget, make any changes that we feel are necessary, and then put out a draft out on the listserv prior to the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say to John and Beth, great job on that upgrade. That was a big project, and things went smoothly all in one day. I know there's still some cleanup and stuff, but that was really well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
do we have any other items that we want to address as a council at this time? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Not hearing anything, I would move that we adjourn. This is Dia.
I hear a second.
I'll second. This is Marcia.
Thank you, Marcia and Dia. Thank you all for participating, and we look forward to getting together again in 2 months.
See you then.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.